Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Kinship Chronicles, the podcast where we do a deep dive into pressing issues in the kinship program within Child Protective Services. I am your host, Stephen Martinez. I am a kinship program specialist within Child Protective Services.
Hi there, my name's Deanna. I'm a Kinship Program Specialist with Child Protective Services, and I'm your co-host. Welcome to the Kinship Chronicles. I'm excited to talk about all things kinship.
The Kinship Chronicles is a space for the kinship caregiver community, the community where grandparents, aunts, uncles, and family friends step up to love a child when it matters most. You didn't expect this path, but you chose it. We'll bring you expert advice, some real-life stories, and the emotional support you need to navigate the big world of child welfare. We want you to know that you are not alone. You are a kinship hero. Now let's start the conversation. Hey listeners, today we're going to be exploring an important topic, kinship care and the benefits that go along with it. Now let's start about some of the basics. In Texas, kinship care is a priority for Child Protective Services. So, Deanna, what does kinship care include?
Kinship care describes the situation where a child entering foster care is placed with blood relatives instead of being placed in an unrelated foster home. So when kids can be placed with, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, um, that is kinship care.
Awesome. And that includes adult siblings too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. And Deanna, what's fictive kin? Because in Child Protective Services, we use that term quite a bit as well.
So fictive kin describes the relationship with, I like to call it the family that we choose, the people that we're not related to, but we have important bonds with. So maybe a neighbor, a godparent, a close family friend. So someone we're not blood related to, but we pretty much chosen on to be our family.
Got it. I got it. So that chosen family, which is really, really great. Now, we're going to be talking quite a bit about the benefits of placing a child in kinship caregivers' homes. Let's talk about that specific first benefit, and that is that the child is going to be experiencing a lot less trauma when they're placed with someone that they know.
Absolutely. We know that just the nature of being involved in the child welfare system and whatever the situation was that brought a child to our attention, um, probably uh, was traumatic in some way and caused some trauma. So, when a child can be placed with someone that they know, someone who's familiar to them, and someone who loves them, they're going to experience less trauma, uh, fewer emotional issues, and fewer behavioral concerns.
Yeah, that's really a good point, Deanna, because when you think about it, when you're in your own terms, like with your own family, you kind of think about the aunts and uncles or cousins or even grandparents that you're really attached to that have seen you through your entire lifetime, and they kind of see how you manage things and what you've been through. So they know the reasons why you behave that way, or they know that the emotional connection pieces that are there because they've seen it before. And that's definitely something that stands out with relatives in kinship care versus foster care, foster homes that may not know that specific thing about you.
Right. They don't have that history or have the prior knowledge of when a child's upset or maybe some behaviors are escalating. What do we do to soothe them? What do we already know works to help them calm down?
Right, right. Yeah, and a really good point that this leads into is that when we're placing with kinship caregivers, children are more likely to be placed with their siblings and maintain those family relationships because of kinship care. Deanna, can you explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So, um, when children are placed in a kinship or fictive kin situation, it's much more likely that placement is willing to take in the siblings to keep them together because they know those children and they don't want to see them separated. We know that the sibling bond is one of the absolute most important relationships that a child can have. And being separated from a sibling can cause a lot of, worry and anxiety and concern thinking about, where's my sister? Where's my brother? Are they safe? And so, kinship caregivers are more likely to keep kids together and to even take in larger sibling groups, whereas, foster homes have capacities that they work within. And, when we have large sibling groups of, 5, 6, sometimes even 7 or 8, um, kinship caregivers are more likely to navigate that.
Yeah, yeah. I always think about the example of a sibling group of four, and that grandma is always grandma gonna find a way. Grandma will find a way to have all four of those kids placed together in their home. And if we're looking at a foster placement, there might not be a slot available for one or two of those kids. We might have to look at two different foster placements to really navigate and make sure that those siblings are staying close together. So I like that kinship caregivers really have that ability to do that in a different way, and they're not restricted by some of those boundaries. Another good point to highlight is that kinship placements usually give the parents hope that the child is going to remain connected to the birth family.
Absolutely. And that hope can lead to greater benefits for those parents as they're trying to remedy the concerns that brought them to our attention. We know that when families can work together to work things out, their outcomes are much better than systems trying to um, force our ways on a family.
Right, right, right. Yeah, good point, Deanna. And another big thing to highlight with benefits of placing with kinship caregivers is that the child is more likely to remain in their community of origin and then also maintain connections to their cultural identity.
Yeah, absolutely. When kids can stay in their community of origin, they're more likely to stay in the same school. They're more likely to maintain connections with their support systems, their religion, their church family, etc. So, because of that stuff, then we know that the child is going to have better behavioral and mental health outcomes.
Yeah, that cultural identity is such a big piece. I know growing up in my family, we always had the Sunday dinners or Sunday afternoon lunches, especially after church, where we would meet up at my grandma's house. And we always knew that even if we didn't go every single Sunday, as long as we would go every once in a while, we'd always see different family members that would show up because they knew regardless that was the home and that was the family connection that we would all have with doing that tradition piece that comes with kinship carrier replacements.
Yeah, you make a good point, so, and it's not just a cultural identity, but that family's culture.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really important thing, especially for the child to kind of maintain that because it kind of continues and allows that child to see that this is even though they experience a traumatic situation or being removed from their parents, the birth parents, that they're maintaining those relationships with that bio family. Another piece of that too is that they'll be able to remain in the same school or school support system, like you mentioned, the religious piece as well, with being around the same church. So when they are placed with relatives or kinship caregivers, that child is more likely to remain in the same school.
Children who are placed in kinship homes are also more likely to experience fewer placement changes. That we know that kinship placements can be more stable than traditional foster placements because those relatives are committed, and because that the child is less likely to re-enter foster care.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of something with my aunt, because we I used to get in trouble when I was little, and as kids do. And I just remember always the aunt would take me to the side and go have a discussion with me. And I think if I didn't have that and it was some stranger that didn't know that they'd have to come and talk to me or take me away or do something like that, it'd be an additional piece that I would lose out on because that aunt knew me from a baby. They helped along the way as we went along, and that'd be really hard for a stranger to really pick up on something like that. That my aunt knows and was able to to give to me at those times.
There's a lot of comfort um, in the no. I know for myself, if I'm in a situation with my family and these are people that I know are gonna make sure, that I'm safe and that they love me, um, that really helps me feel so much more comfortable than thinking about navigating unknown experiences, right?
Right.
Even as an adult, like think about, you're going to go meet new people or go do something that you've never done before. And what do? We try to gain as much knowledge as we can about that because we want to know what's coming. We want to know what to expect. And that's exactly what happens with our kids. They're experiencing an unknown situation coming into the child welfare system. So, at least being with their family can provide a lot of comfort.
Yeah, and as it's seen in some of our pieces, our data pieces within Child Protective Services, kinship placements are just more stable than traditional foster placements.
Yeah. Another good point is it is illegally required for us to prioritize placement in kinship homes over unrelated homes. That is the state, federal, and best practice. And DIA has its own best practice model to prioritize kinship care and to make continued efforts to place children with kinship care when you're not already there.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point because we need to highlight that that's something we're legally required to do, but we're also seeing a big trend in Texas where we're just increasing kinship placements overall, and we kind of pinpoint that to say, hey, we see the value in kinship caregiver placements, and we see the importance of that to maintain all these pieces. So, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we're seeing in Texas's kinship care program right now. As you know, Deanna, kinship caregivers don't always have the same access to resources or training as traditional foster parents. Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of it is because kinship caregivers get kind of suddenly thrust into the situation without warning. When someone wants to become a foster parent and take in unrelated children, they plan for that. That's a conscious decision that they make to seek out that situation, to do the training classes and whatnot, so that they can take in unrelated care and unrelated children. Excuse me, but it's often, kinship caregivers don't have the luxury of time a lot of times. These are situations that happen quickly. Sometimes they'll get a call, even not always traditional or normal hours. It can even be like, late at night. And there's someone from Child Protective Services on the other end saying, "Hey, we're over here with your niece and nephew, and they're going to go into unrelated foster care if you can't provide a place for them to stay. Will you take them?" And yes,
That's a crazy scenario, right? Like
yeah,
imagine having someone call you to ask or to bring that situation to you. That's intense.
yeah, absolutely. So while it is a decision to say yes or no, is it really always, I guess, super voluntary? Or because who's sometimes people do have to say no for very good reasons, but um, it's hard to say no to your family. And so caregivers say yes, but then they're left with figuring out what to do next.
Yeah, and a lot of it is that kinship caregivers are just suddenly thrust into this role without any sort of warning. And you'd highlighted it before about kinship caregivers and foster parents, the differences between them. Foster parents have a lot of training and a lot of like supports leading up to that. Also, they have access to resources like financial resources that kinship caregivers just don't have. And from all the years that we've been in child welfare, we can honestly say that the financial strain piece for kinship caregivers is brought up frequently because this is a situation that they were not expecting. This was unplanned for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have unexpected expenses, that can be a strain on your budget. So, extra mouths to feed, or sometimes when kids come into the child welfare system, they don't always, come with a closet full of clothes and backpacks and school supply, but over the counter medications and all the things that kids need to be, um, well cared for. And so caregivers really have to figure it out, and, beds and what shoes, like, all the things that kids need.
And just to reiterate, or if we haven't mentioned this before, we're going to be talking about financial resources and some training pieces in additional episodes of the podcast. So definitely, we're going to highlight those a little bit more in detail when we're going over those. And we do want to do a quick little wrap up of the benefits of placing with kinship caregivers. So just to remind our listeners that Texas is legally required to prioritize kinship placements over other options. When we're placing with kinship caregivers, the child is more likely to be placed with siblings, maintain family relationships, and connections to that birth family. Also want to remind people that the child is more likely to remain in the community and maintain connections to cultural identity when they're placed with kinship caregivers. They're more likely to stay in the same school, have the same support system. They're also going to be experiencing less trauma, and they're going to have better behavioral and mental health outcomes when placed with kinship caregivers. And they're also going to have fewer placement changes and less likely to re enter foster care. I'm not sure if we mentioned this before, but to reiterate, we have data specifically on our DFPS public website that talks about the recidivism rate into foster care. So we can see from our data book that the child will be um, experiencing fewer placement changes, and that they will not, or they are less likely to re-enter foster care if they're placed with a kinship caregiver. So we see the benefits of kinship caregivers and the benefits of placing with them. So in conclusion, we just want to say that kinship care is such an essential part of child protective services in Texas. It really does provide a stability, emotional support, and a sense of continuity for children who have experienced trauma. And we do know that the child in child protective services involvement has experienced trauma. And just to also be clear, is that there is still work to be done to ensure that these kinship families get the resources and the supports that they need to thrive.
Absolutely, Steph. And if we're going to make a real impact in the lives of kids in the system, we have to continue to focus on strengthening kinship care programs. It's not just about placing children with family, it's about making sure that that family has everything they need to care for those children.
Yeah, and we really do hope that this conversation has helped shed a light on the benefits of kinship care in Texas. And as always, if you have any questions, any thoughts, or are trying to become a kinship caregiver for a child under the conservatorship of Texas, reach out to us on Facebook. We will be posting the Texas Kinship Caregivers on this podcast, so we'll have that available so y'all can check out. But if you search us on Facebook at Texas Kinship Caregivers, reach out to us at any time. That's a great resource to reach out to us and connect with us.
Absolutely. Take care to listeners. We look forward to continuing conversations on the next episode of the Kinship Chronicles.